Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 97. And my guest in this episode is Ejiro Osakede, otherwise known as the energetic EJ. And EJ is a singer, trainer, sound engineer, voice-over artist, and event host, as well as a podcaster. So I really enjoyed my conversation with EJ because it's really inspiring to be in the presence of a woman in this case who is just really tapped into the energy of life or the flow of life, or however you want to say that, and I just really felt that when we were in conversation together, and I'm sure you'll pick up on that in the conversation. She's just a very switched on person, and I'd like to thank Tiffany Zahara, who was a previous guest of mine who introduced me to Ejiro. But we had a lovely conversation, and we'll file this under just really amazing people who are doing good things. So thank you so much for coming to this channel and witnessing this conversation. I appreciate it. And I'd like to welcome Ejiro Osakede to the IdeaCast interview series. I'm looking forward to an inspiring conversation about communication and speaking and all the things that come along with communication. And Ejiro, I look forward, or I'm going to call you Energetic EJ going forward, because that's your handle. So you will be Energetic EJ if that's good with you. So welcome, and I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad to communicate with you. So let's explore.
Thank you so very much, Justin, for having me here today. Thank you.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you here as a guest. So yeah, and let's say that's our informal theme is communication, and here we are communicating. But you are really invested in this, what I would call both a natural function of us humans, as well as a creative art, something that takes work, it takes discipline and polish and support. So let's explore these ideas in our conversation, if you will. And I would like, though, for the audience, and by the way, welcome YouTube audience, didn't want to ignore you guys. Let's explore your background for a moment, and you can bring us, both the audience and myself, up to speed on where you're coming from and how you got to where you are.
All right. Thank you again, Justin, for having me here on your show. Yes, this is the Energetic EJ, officially Ejiro Osakede. I am Nigerian. I was born in the south region of Nigeria many years ago. So I consider myself a special kid to my parents because it took them a while before I came along, about a decade plus. And so I was that, special kid to my parents. My dad loved me to a fault. He's of blessed memory now. But I opened the way. So he sees me as the door opener to the rest of my siblings. To the glory of God, I have technically 6 siblings, 4 from my mom, and I have 2 step siblings. So it's quite a big family, right? But I mean, a lot has happened, that we're not together, but somehow we're finding our ways back to each other to stay connected. So I've always been that expressive child. Well, from the stories I was told, right? Because because I'm one person who, I think a lot happened when I was growing up. And so there are parts of my childhood that I can't really remember. And I think maybe at some point I might need to maybe get help, like hypnotherapy, to go back to really remember. But I'm okay. I'm good. There are parts, pieces of it that I can remember that I've dealt with in my journey to growing and evolving into a better version of myself. But I've always been the expressive child, as I was told. I've always been bold, being confident, be the spotlight kind of kid. But in there somewhere, it got missing. I was probably maybe with the wrong crew, or had the wrong adults around who kind of spoke that down, or made it feel like, oh, you're too much. What is wrong with you? You just be calm, be quiet, stay still, and all of those things piling up together, caused me to kind of, lose my voice in a way. But it's always there. It's always there. And I'm a firm believer that regardless of the things that happen to us in life, what is innate will always fight its way back up somehow. But again, is we have to be responsible to listen to what is trying to come out of us and find out why am I always drawn to this thing? Why do I always want to do this, regardless of all the shutting down, that I got? So I feel like for some reason, I'm grateful to God for that, by the way, that all the attempts to ensure that my voice is silent, it didn't happen, right? I found my way somehow. I found a way to keep using my voice, every time I get into a particular space, be that a spiritual setting or a creative setting or any community, things like that. I don't struggle to get to the limelight. I don't struggle to be the one, like, somebody's here. Who is this person? Who is this person? I don't struggle for it. So that kind of tells me something. But it took a long time for me to be able to come to terms with it, that, you know what, I think the spotlight loves me. I'm made for it. So I might as well lean into it and be intentional about it. And that's how come my journey into using my voice, getting interested in things around the voice, that is speaking, singing. Like I said, I'm a performer. I've been in the entertainment industry in Nigeria for a while. So I do backup singing back in the days. I do audio engineering, like sound engineering back in the days, right? So I work in studios and then on stage. I was traveling around Nigeria as a backup singer and things like that. But then again, there comes, the inner call again, that keeps calling, like there is more to you than just being a backup singer or just being a popular person. And I think that was when I connected the dots to say that I am a person of impact. And so if I'm going to impact my word positively, I have to be intentional about it. It's not something that I just dabble into and just keep dabbling, right? I have to come to a place where I have to choose, like, okay, I know now, I have accepted now that the limelight is somewhere that I can flourish. How do I want to flourish? And so I started to put in structure into that. And it's been a journey of evolving into one form to another. And that is why I am a woman of many expressions. So just looking at jumping into everything that calls out for me per time and seeing which one sticks. But with all my expression, actually, there's been a connection, which is just this voice thing. At some point I was singing, then I was speaking, like facilitating, teaching, training, and, creating. I'm a podcaster, I'm an author, I'm an event host. Do you see? So there's that connection, all of it being using my voice. And now I have found my way and grown into becoming a coach now. And so, yeah, this is just like a rough summary of how it started versus how it's going right now.
And the fact that you have arrived at being a coach, someone who mentors others, speaks well to where you're coming from, the good faith that you're entering into with your relationship with the work that you do, with communication, with singing and production and event organization and podcasting. I admire that fact that you want to give back, you want to elevate the persons who are coming up in their age, younger people. And now in your coming of age and your development as a woman, were there barriers there that may not have been there for a man? Probably a stupid question, but I just want to, say that this may have been one other thing, that you had to be tenacious and you had to, sort of fight through the societal suppositions that women couldn't do some of the things that you did. So do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. And by the way, there's never a stupid question, because
Yeah.
for all you know, I might have not had any hiccups when it comes to being a woman, right? But sorry to say, I do.
Yeah, I figured.
Besides, I'm a Black woman, obviously.
Yeah, on top of that, yeah.
Yes. So I think for me, though, personally, it's not more around, oh, you're a woman, you can't do this. So my parents are not educated, or they're, would I say, semi-educated. Mm-hmm. So they just like had it up to like what you would call grade, I think probably grade 6.
Okay.
That's what they had it up to, both of them. So they didn't know much. They didn't know better. But the little that they did know, I am grateful for them. I'm grateful for my dad. I'm grateful for my mom. My dad is late now. My mom is still here. They didn't box us. And I think that's a blessing in itself. Although they didn't know better to direct us in the way we should go, apart from my mom, who like really brought us up in the way of the Lord. I'm a Christian, so she ensured that she introduced us to Jesus and things like and that faith in God. So that was an anchor. But when it came to career and being expressive, they didn't know, what directions they were. Of course, at the time, there were other parents who like, oh, there are 5 major professions that your kids should engage in, right? That could bring in prestige, honor to the family, then money to the family as well. So you have doctors, you have lawyers, you have accountants, you have engineers, and maybe, I can't remember the 5th one, right? So those were major categories, right? But my parents didn't really know better. And they did not force us to say, oh, I want you to be a doctor. No, you should be a lawyer. No. It was more of, what do you like? There was nothing. So we had the liberty to decide or to determine what we wanted to be. So, and I remember that I've always thought to myself as a child, like, I loved when I watched TV and saw presenters, presenting the news, broadcasting the news, saying, welcome to this, blah, blah, blah. I loved it. It was calling to me. But at the time, I didn't have, all of those. I didn't have references around me, so to say, to make me put myself in the picture to say, I can do this, right? And to decide. But, peer pressure, when I was in secondary school, my friends wanted to be accountant. I'm like, okay, let's go. I'll be an accountant. But I suck at maths or calculations and everything. And I had an F the first time I attempted the exams. And I'm like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. And so I switched. Well, so for me, I wouldn't say it was more of a thing like, oh, you're a girl child or anything. Like I said earlier on, I considered myself a special kid. And so I had that air around me, like, I can do anything. I can do anything. But in being there as a woman is to say that, there are the things that we face as women. Talk about our hormones, and those things, I didn't come into the understanding of them on time. And so that played a role in how much I believed, how well I understood who I was as a person, and how that played into how I was able to connect this thing that is there. I can feel it. I can't explain it. I can't express it. It's there, but then there is not enough capacity to connect it. So I would think that is what affected me more. And then again, getting into real life and seeing that there's this divide, between what a woman can do and what they can't do, what kind of jobs, and, but for me, growing up, I felt like I was more like a tomboy because I was always hang out with the guys and all of that. So when I started to get interested in when I got to the industry and I started to do things like the sound engineering, where I was building microphones, speakers, lifting heavy speakers, to set up stage for concerts and events, it was looking like, wow, why would you do that? But again, those were things that really called my name, because for me, it's like, I'm the odd one out. And it's made me stand out anyways, because we go for event and they'll be asking like, who are the lead engineers for this setup? And then the guys in the house will point to me and my colleague who was a girl as well. So both of us, we worked together and we were being trained by a man. And so that always, the shock was always so satisfying.
Yeah, I bet. Surprise.
Like, what do we, like, they're like, huh? What? This one's like, yeah. And they will come, what's the issue? Your mic is not working. Okay, what line? We fixed that. I'm like, wow. So that, that was really good. That felt good at the time. So I wouldn't say the challenge for me was not more around, oh, you can't do this as a woman. Or I didn't get into all of that space.
Okay.
Quite enough until we started to open up to, the international news to know that, oh, there's such a thing as feminism and all of that. And even at that, I really didn't dig deep into that. I just believe that at the end of the day is you can do what you think you can do. And it is you building capacity to get to that place to do what you think you can do. Yeah, I think that would be it for me.
Okay. Now, I had a question come to mind when you were talking about the expectations that parents put upon their children and the 5 pillars of success. And do you think that's like more of a, I would say Western, but I almost maybe a Northern thing since you were in Africa. Do you think that is a European or Western kind of mindset that was imbued upon Nigerians? Or do you think Nigerians culturally, apart from Western influence, would say these kind of things like, oh, you need the technical career, or you need a higher advanced education?
I would think it's a combination of
Okay.
all. But again, if you look back into history and looking at, the colonial era, we didn't know about all these things until, we were colonized and thought that, okay,
it was put
there's such
on
a
there.
thing as, exactly, there's such a thing as this. And at the time, it felt like those were the profession that gave you work, they gave you good pay, number one, but also prestige.
Okay.
Like any family with a doctor is like, the parents are proud. Oh, do you know my son is a doctor? Actually, my daughter is a lawyer. It's a thing of class.
Yeah.
Right. And then the arts was like relegated to the dullards. Like,
how ironic.
Exactly. If you said you wanted to be a writer, like really,
please.
How do you make money from writing? You want to be a singer, really?
Yeah.
It was when we started
terrible.
to see people, succeed as footballers, as musicians. Then parents are like, oh, really? Oh, please, you want to sing? Okay. You need microphone? We'll get it for you. You want to go to music school? Come on, go. Right? But that did not happen, until we started to see people succeed big time in that area. But at the time, it was more like professionals. I think back then it was those professionals that could also easily be exported. The doctors, they could easily be exported. They could, this person has gone abroad. Good, right? So I think that was it. So I think it's probably, there should be Western influence, I would say.
Okay. It strikes me as being something that kind of smells of that, it's like Western influence kind of thing. Because I mean, there are cultures where the division of labor is more egalitarian, and the writers and the thinkers in a community are revered, the artists, the singers, or the shaman or the medicine person, so I'm thinking like more in our deeper history as humans across the planet, that should, that makes more sense. But then along comes sort of the industrial revolution mindset of, like you said, a caste system or a class system, and you want to aspire to be which is born of feudal Europe, kings and nobility, and then serfdoms and things like that. So that's where I was wondering. And Absolutely. So how did your folks react when you were moving in the direction of working in sound engineering and performance and things like that? How did that land with them?
Well, like I said, they didn't know better. They just knew, okay, this girl she's doing what she loves. She seemed to be happy. And again, we were from a very humble background. And when I was in year, I think this should be grade 12 now, like the final year before before college or university. Just a year before that, my dad lost his job. So it was at the time, he was a sailor. So I think that was a little bit of, maybe that had an influence on him of not being so hard on, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, because he himself started to work with, the white guys quite early. He was a sailor, so he would travel a lot. And so, but just the year before my final year, in secondary school, he lost his job. And so things went really, really bad. And so I was at that point that I was like thrust into to get out, because at that point it felt like I I dropped out of school because I couldn't do my final exam. So I couldn't graduate with the students like normal. So I had to leave. I started to work, and that was when I got into the entertainment industry because I could sing at the time. So that was, the next thing I could do. So at the time, it was more like I became the breadwinner of the family. So there is no complaint there.
Okay.
There was nothing to complain about because this was more like our tickets to surviving as a family.
Okay. And then one last question about Nigerian culture and family. Do Nigerian women like yourself get a lot of pressure for the following that very traditional route of, well, you need to marry, you need to find somebody, and then you need to settle down and have the kids? And there's a little bit of that here in the United States. It's dissolved thanks to the people in the 1960s who were like the women who were like, nope, I don't. And there was good and bad for that, but. So speak to that if you don't mind, if that's okay, if you want to cover that one.
Of course, we are Africans.
Yeah.
the reason people got married back then wasn't just for love.
Right.
It was for power.
Okay.
It was for production, right? Because the bigger your family, the more hands on deck in the farms, the more crops you can grow, the more harvest you can make, the more money you get, the richer you are in the society, the more revered you are. So it's an hierarchy thing. So
yeah, okay.
It's like it was more like acquiring. But when it shifted to no, we're not objects, blah blah. I'm not so great with history. I think I should really dig deep into it. But from the little I know is that, in my own time, yes, the pressure is there. I think it's still there even now, because the pressure is there.
Okay. Yeah, and I asked the question rather broadly. I didn't want to put it on you necessarily,
I know.
that's getting personal. But like I said, so this is to set us up to understand that you're coming from a background where there are traditional norms and beliefs about what your role in society should be and what the bar of expectations might be. And that you, again, being the tenacious person that you were and the one who understood to follow her voice and her soul, that you kept your line of sight on what your goals and your ambitions were. And so that's remarkable and not like majorly remarkable, but I just want to acknowledge that.
Well,
and
I would say I had my fair share of that because it shaped how I also dreamt in a way, right? More like, because it was more like, oh, that's the ultimate for a woman to get settled, to get into a marriage, right? And so when the age started to count, you started to feel like, what's going on? Is something wrong with me? Why am I not able to settle into a relationship? Why is nobody looking my way? Why is nobody loving up on me? And so all of those questions start to come, to the extent, and then you see your friends or your age group, just, popping up here, getting married, and you're like, what is wrong with me? Am I okay? Right? So it becomes a thing of sometimes the pressure could be much. It becomes a thing of the available becomes desirable. Not because that's not what you desire, not because that's what you really desire, but because, the pressure is much like, oh my God, everybody's getting married. What's wrong with me? What's going to happen to me? So the next, oh my God, you love me? You really do? Okay, let's get married, right?
Yeah. Zip.
So there is that pressure. And it's not the topic I'm comfortable to talk about yet, but I think I would get there. But the thing I would say is I made a mistake. I fell into that pressure because I feel like I could have waited to know me. And so my message really to women is, don't allow the pressure get to you so bad that you get into a commitment that you are not ready for, because it will hurt you and the person you're getting the commitment with. So that's the much I can say for now. But the pressure is there.
Yeah. And again, I didn't want the question to be directed to you personally. It was more a broader question. But thank you for sharing that kernel of wisdom that you just shared to women out there, that that just settling or doing it out of a perceived pressure to be that in line and in big part of the bell curve where everybody's married and has 2.3 children and things like that. Yeah, I think that's really, yeah, whatever that looks like. Yeah, I think that's really wise. And I think women need that encouragement from their peers and from the ones who came before them to say, hey, listen, whatever you. So I'm very cynical, and this is probably going to come off, some people are going to just roll their eyes, but like, there's enough human beings on this planet, so don't worry about having a big family. There's 8 billion of us. I mean, I'm being very cynical here, but that's how I look at it. Like, if I didn't have children, right, and I'm good with that because there's plenty of people out there, I can enjoy other people's children. So for me, that's just my personal way of looking at it. There's lots of us out there. I can enjoy all of us. You know what I mean? And that's not a woman's perspective. I understand that, but that's just me being strange. And so if that helps in any way, which it probably does.
That is like, I mean, yeah, now people are thinking in that light right now, but again, it's what? You don't want to have children? What?
Yeah, you don't have family? Yeah, and again, I'm being kind of silly and a little bit cynical, but if you're on the fence and you're like, should I just, settle for having a family, even though my spirit is calling me in this direction, just say, go enjoy other people's children. Go, work
you can also adopt.
Exactly. That's what I was stumbling to say, is go work with adoption and fostering, and you can, there are so many children
that gets closer to the children, right?
Yes, that need your love and support. And so anyway, I'm getting a little off track, but I wanted to just throw that in there, that if you are a young woman listening to this show and you're getting that pressure that you're feeling, that there's more than one way to navigate life experience and be fulfilled and feel good and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, though, and thank you for being vulnerable in that sense. That this is sensitive. I mean, I understand that. I can empathize that women struggle with that thinking, like, what's wrong with me that I am not married at 30 or 35 and I don't have 2 children or whatever it is. So anyway, I appreciate that. So let's move forward. You are an expat now. You're living in UAE, as I understand it, right? Okay. So what inspired the move? If you're okay, comfortable sharing, what motivated you to spread your wings and fly?
Because I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. Think about it every night and day. I spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. I see me running through the open door. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly.
The beautiful songbird, energetic EJ. So you spread your wings and you flew.
And I flew. Well, well, let me just say this. I came here first for studies because, like I said, my dad lost his job just when I was about to hit my final year in secondary school. And so I had to start working immediately to care for the family. And so at that point, first, we reached out to family members, like immediate family members, to help at the point to raise the funds to pay for my fees, but nothing came forth, right? And this was so painful because at the time, my dad was a very generous person. We were trained and we grew up in a generous family. So we always had people in the house, had people around, it was painful that when we needed that kind of help, we didn't get it. Right. So when I started to work and all of that, and then things didn't really quite pick up on time. And so it was more like I was always dependent on people. And the saying, beggars have no choice. Mm-hmm. So it was more like that. And so there was a point it got to me and I'm like, you know what, if my dad is not able to send me to school, I am not going to go to school. I'd rather work, take care of them, take care of my younger ones, ensure that my younger ones go. It's fine if I don't, right? Mm-hmm. And so we kept on, patching things up, trying everything and trying to survive, to move on, to stay afloat and everything. And so when I eventually settled down. Things were okay with me and my family. Things were moving quite well. And then the last born, the baby of the house, also got into school and was doing well. And I think it was close to, I think at second or third year, getting towards, okay, she's going to round up soon. And I'm like, okay, I think we've done well, right? We've done well. And I had a conversation with my partner at the time to say, you know what, I think I want to get educated. I want to continue my education now. And I would love to get a degree. And so we had that conversation, and we looked at it like, okay, at this point, you're not going to school because you have to. You don't have to. So for this reason, you don't have to just pick any course just because you want to go to school. That's something you would do when you were younger. It's like, okay, we don't know, we'll figure it out as we go. But like, you're older now, you should be sensible enough to know exactly what you want so that you can then go. But again, I just want to say this out here quickly to anyone listening to this, especially women, is that it's okay not to figure things out on time. It's okay to double your way into who you are. And that's what life is about. Like, there is no, it's not a competition first. It's not an examination for you to say, oh, you passed, you failed. It's just a journey. And I believe that, as you go through the journey intentionally, at first it might not be intentional, but as you go through it, always bringing yourself back to questioning yourself, like, am I here? Why am I here? Am I here for this purpose? Is this what I should be doing? Is this what my heart is calling to? Is this what is calling to my soul? As you go through life asking those important questions, you will find your way. That's just the truth. I think the way God created us is we have inner compasses, and they call to us as ideas, as dreams, as, pictures. For some of us, it's pretty vivid, and you can't pull it away. Like, no matter how much you go in the wrong direction, you always find yourself coming back to the same one picture. And so if you just sit with yourself to question yourself and to be factual with yourself, you will be clear that this picture that keeps popping, at every interval, it must mean something. And if I go in that direction, you might just find fulfillment. Okay. So at the time, things were going well. And I said, okay, you know what? It's time to go to school. And so when we looked at it and considered everything I've done up until the time, audio was popping out. I had spoken, I'd gone for training to become an on-air personality. I was singing in church. I'd recorded a few singles myself. Audio was popping out. And I had also, would I say, caught this vision to be to play a role in helping African authors leave a digital footprint in the audiobook space. So we set up a company for audiobooks production for African authors specifically, right? So everything was going around audio. And so it was more like, the connection was more like, okay, you know what? Maybe you should go get a degree in audio engineering or in audio production so that you can have that as an authority stamp in your field. Yeah. And that was, by the time we looked at it, at the time, myself and my partner of the time would been visiting the UAE for holidays. Yeah. And one of those years, I'd come and done a short course in public speaking in a certain school. And so when this conversation came up in 2017, December of 2017, the school popped up again, like, okay, they offer the kind of course I would like to do. So, like, why not go for it? And so at the time, we're also looking at maybe we should relocate and things like that. So it was just an easy pick, like, okay, you just go to school there, and when you finish, we'll see how we can then get integrated in the system. And that was what really brought me here in 2018. And then the course was supposed to be for 3 years, but 2 years later, COVID hits, right? It's 2020, COVID hits. And at the time COVID hits, I just had to, because, already we were having financial strains at the time, so I had to put a hold. But where I stopped, I could exit with an associate degree, and so that's what I opted for. So it was school that brought me here, but then, life is like, we still need you here. And so I'm just here, figuring things out and then seeing where, God will lead me to next.
Yeah. Enter into that spontaneous relationship with what arises and what comes to you, right? What's being presented to you in life.
Yes.
That's yeah. And I admire that style of living that some people would prefer to have more of a sort of regimented, prescribed, very steady, predictable kind of path in front of them. But I think, yeah, right. But I don't know what that's like. Yeah, I don't know what that's like myself, but I think there are people out there like that. So no offense to you. But yeah, I just that you are willing to live in the moment and be inspired by what arises for you, even if it's not good. Sometimes the things that aren't pleasant are indicators, and they'll say, "Oh, okay, I'm like you said a moment ago. I'm colder. I want to get warmer. I want to get more close to that which speaks to my truth or to my essence. Your soul's expression." So we're in 2023. You're in Dubai. You were educated. You got your certifications, and again, you wear many hats. You arrange. If I understand this right, you arrange public speaking events or conferences, or you're part of the arrangement process and production process, right? You're an audiobook reader. You do coaching for people. So gosh, where do I want to land? You've got your Stretch Street podcast shirt on, and I wanted to talk to you about that. So let's bring that into the fold, and then maybe we can weave all the other things in and out of that. So podcasting, communicating, having guests on, what was your vision with setting that up? Was that a personal project, or is it something that just coincides with your other
So when I started, years down, like 2014, 2015, I just dabbled. These were all part of the things that informed my decision to go study this particular audio in the uni, right? But so I dabbled into podcasting a little bit back then, but it was just for fun. Like, I was just inquisitive. At some point, I even nursed a dream of having an internet radio station. I actually started it, but it wasn't flowing at the time, so I had to stop it. But then 2019 was when I came back again. It was still the same yearning in my heart, calling. Like, there is more to you. There is more to your voice than just singing in church, right? There is more to your voice than just recording songs. And at the time, the moment I came into school, most of that stopped, because before I came to school here, I was already building, like a musical brand, because I had, I was like a gospel singer back home. So I was organizing concerts in Ghana, going to the studio to record, being a minister at churches, conferences, concerts, events, things like that, right? So it was gradually becoming bigger. But the moment I came here, all of that kind of quiet, because again, for me, it was a case of culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming into a place where it was majorly Islamic, in nature. So I wasn't sure where I was going to fit in. And, it was a lot to handle at the time. School was tough for me. I mean, in my class, all my colleagues, my classmates were like half my age. So that was on its own tough, right? Like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like, why am I doing this? Like, must I go to school? I remember I can't count how many times I felt like, what, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. I can't survive this. But my partner at the time was like, nope, you started this, you're going to complete it, right? Yeah. Thank God for him at the time. So, all of that. And so the musical part kind of mellowed, even though I continued to sing in church. And so in 2019, it was just like, I feel like I should be doing more. I'm like, what is this more? What does more look like? And I remember having that conversation with my family, right? I have a son as well. So, and I think it was my son who said, I must have made a funny statement. And my son was like, what do you mean you don't know anything? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about, Mom? And everything, right? But that conversation kind of led to me deciding in that year, like, you know what? I think I should start a podcast. And at the time, I started with a Christian podcast called Worship Song of the Week, where I would just pick a particular worship song that spoke to me, for that week. So it could be that the message in the song really spoke to a certain, like a vivid situation in my life for that week, or it encouraged me throughout the week. It was something I could hold on to. So I started like that, and then it morphed into me, like it became boring. I'm a sanguine, right? So I got bored easily.
Okay.
So it became like just me talking about my worship song. Like, dude, are you the only one on earth? Like, who's going to listen to you talk about the worship song every week?
Right.
So I'm like, no, this can't continue like this. So I started to invite other people to talk about their worship song of the week, and it was fun. And then it morphed into me actually reaching out to gospel singers to say, what was the story behind their songs? And so that continued for a year. And then I think at the 1 year mark, I started to get really tired. Like, okay, it was becoming a struggle. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to force it, especially because it was spiritually inclined. I don't want to force it. I don't want to fake it. I don't want to say a song is my song of the week when I've not listened to the song. It just becomes content. I'm like, no, it's going to negate my belief system, and I don't want it. So I'm like, you know what? I'll go on a break, and then I'll see how I feel. If it works, if it comes back strong again, I'll go at it again. But just like a month into the break, I got into a conversation with a couple, and, you know, it came up like, you know what, you're so good at this podcasting thing, AJ. How about we have something more circular, more that is more broad, that speaks to Africa and things like that? I'm like, that's not a bad idea, actually. Let's do it. For me, like, I'm a doer. I love to do.
Right.
If it works, fine. If it doesn't, we learn and we move on. And so I started the Afrocentrist podcast, and it was going okay. But then it started as a collaboration, like with this couple I was talking about. But then I think life happened. They weren't able to, like, you know, be there the way I wanted them to be. So it was all back to me. And I'm like, I'm not about to let this podcast die again. No, I am not. I don't want to be that kind of person who just drop picks. I'm like, this is going to work whether I like it or not. So I started to let it flow from within, like whatever comes to mind. I was experimenting with it. So on my podcast back then, I had several segments for each day of the week. I had Business Monday, I had Discovery Tuesday, I had the woman, her story, her impact on Wednesdays. I have live sessions on Thursdays. And then I was about introducing Fun Fridays.
Oh my, that's ambitious.
I know, right? I don't know what I was thinking. Well, but I think for me, it was more like I knew, okay, this is possible, right? But also is an opportunity for me to empower people. So I was looking for a situation where I wasn't thinking of me handling the whole sessions, but I wanted a situation where I would get people interested enough, but weren't driven enough to do it on their own, so we can do it together, right? So I had a couple of people step up to help with the Tuesday version. So I was doing the Monday ones every other week, but the bestseller for me back then was the Wednesday ones, which is for women. It was interesting. But then as I continued to learn and grew, I took a refresher's course in podcasting. And for the first time in many years, after I've been listening to all the great teachers and speakers talk about niching down, it clicked. Like, you have to focus on one thing for you to be able to, you know, spread. And so by the time I did that reevaluation, I've thought to myself, I'm spreading myself too thin with all these different segments on the podcast. Can I zone in on one thing? And if I was to choose of all the factors, what would be that one thing that holds it together? I discovered it was the stories. It was the stories of people. It was learning from their mistakes, from their challenges and things like that. And that was when I rebranded to Stretch Streets. Because life is a street. And on this street called life, we are stretched to our limits sometimes. That sometimes we snap, but sometimes we don't. Whichever way, we always find ourselves coming back or bouncing back, because we learn through those situations, we grow through them, and we become better versions of ourselves. Not everyone are able to survive their stretch period, but most people are able to. And when they do, and they're able to unpack the lessons from those stretchy periods, they become better. They become more valuable, because by the time you tell me you've been through this, and this, and you're able to come out of it, I want to listen to you and I want to learn from your mistakes so that I don't make the same mistakes. You see, that's why I started Stretch Street Podcast, to document the stretch stories of people who have been through like diverse stretches and how they were able to navigate those seasons. But most importantly, what are the life lessons that they brought out of those seasons? Because for me, again, like I said, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a broadcaster and things like that, but I didn't have enough references around me. With my podcast now, my goal is to become a resource of references to show people how tenacious we can be as humans, how resilient we can be, and the power of resilience, knowing that no matter how tough life has dealt with you, with the right mindset, you can always have a comeback. And your comeback can always be a source of, like, almost 100% of the time, it is going to be a source of inspiration to somebody else. And so I'm just collating those stories together. And for me now, it's now beyond just content. It is legacy for me. My children are going to grow to listen to this podcast. My grandchildren are going to grow up to listen to this podcast and say, wow, that's my mom. That's my grandma. That's what she did. Look at all the different people she has spoken to across the world. And so, like, it's been a beautiful journey. I've interviewed people from almost all the continents in the world. I think Antarctica and maybe North America is what is remaining. But so it's been a beautiful journey, and I don't think I am going anywhere soon.
Good. Yeah, I think that's commendable, because I and again, this is just something coming from me, that I think learning to be, as you said, resilient, but also anti-fragile. And I want to say that guardedly, because that sounds like a very charged word, but when we are fragile to the obvious maelstrom of complexity that comes at us in this modern world, we have to have, it's like your immune system. If viruses are constantly coming to you, you want your immune system to be able to handle those viruses. And that's what this is my interpretation of what you just said, is you are teaching people to have that immune system, but socially and emotionally to be more resilient, but also to not allow those viruses to impact you as hard. The first time you might catch a social cold, you'll feel bad or whatever, but then you learn from that and you grow and develop. So that you're doing that, I think, is a gift and a necessary tool for our toolboxes in the modern world, is that when we develop, again, a means for being resilient, but also a means for absorbing those hits and the stretching that occurs, and
Building
coming back stronger,
capacity.
like you said, whether it's us sharing the story, like as you pointed out, or us just knowing internally that we weathered that one storm and we came out of it, we understand how to navigate that storm the next time. So anyway, that's my long-winded way of just really gratefully acknowledging what you're doing in that work, that it is absolutely necessary, and it needs many voices, many faces, many diverse backgrounds to share that story, right? So that we can all say, oh my gosh, yes, this runs across so many boundaries that we do. This is humaning. This is how we grow together and grow stronger. So yeah, hats off to you for that, and here's to the continued blessings and success for you in that endeavor.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now,
to speak, so to speak, to your public speaking and doing events, share with people in the audience, especially younger folks, the art of, to me, it takes a little bit of courage and tenacity, which you have, to get on a stage and talk to 40 or 400 or 4,000 people. When you and I are talking, we're in a relation of one-to-one. I'm listening to you, you're listening to me, we're going back and forth, but I think it's certainly a different dynamic when you are talking to 400 people. Do you want to share to that, like, how things change, and it's got to be a little scary at first, but it's also got to be a little bit empowering to know that you have 800 ears, except for those who are hearing impaired, of course, but those who are paying attention to you. Speak to that, if you will, what that feels like and what that means.
Absolutely. There's that they say it's a fact that public speaking is the biggest phobia that ever exists. Like, there are people who would rather jump into a coffin
Yeah, just skip it all together.
than stand up to speak. What? And not to laugh at their fear, because their fear is valid.
Yeah.
But again, I think this really speaks to who we are and who we are called to be. And for me, honestly, speaking, like I said, I mean, speaking is part of it, but being on that spotlight, being on a stage is something I feel I am created for. And so for this reason, it feels like, duh, is it not to speak in front of people? Yes, I get the jitters, yes. But the fact that I have the opportunity to speak, it speaks to something. Like, nobody will call me up on any stage just to come and faff or to come and blab, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I've built momentum up until this place. But if you go back to when I started, to say that according to the story I heard while I'm growing up, I've always been this person. So for me, it's beyond a skill. It is also a gift that I've just had to hone over the years. But that is not to say that you cannot grow it as a skill. Because again, as humans, you cannot escape speaking. The measure to which you speak would differ from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, if you ever dream of being a person of impact, you can't escape it. You have to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have to speak in whatever capacity. So whether that be virtually or in person. And when did I begin to just zone in on the event part of things? It was during COVID, honestly. When we all had to be indoors. And the only place we could socialize was on the internet.
Yeah.
So there had to be a lot of events going on. But people were not sure how to even handle it. Like, what's going on? Okay, I'm at this event, but I'm in my house. I'm on my couch. Like, duh, what's going on? I could be eating for all I care. We saw all manner of videos with people not forgetting that the camera is on and doing all manner of things.
Yeah, right. Whoopsies.
Right?
Right.
But then again, this is what I'm saying to allude to this fact. Like, I have been using Zoom, for example, since like 2016, 2017 for meetings, right?
Yeah.
But most people weren't until COVID. Like, they started to think, oh, Zoom, okay, how do you do it?
Yeah, a whole new world.
Do you understand? So
Yeah.
I mean, I started to, I dug deep. It was 2020 I reinvented myself. It was 2020 that Energetic EJ was born. She didn't exist before then, right? Or she existed potentially, all right?
Yeah,
But she manifested. She manifested in 2020. And so all of this happened after I also delved online. But look at it. My attraction online, a lot of things happened in 2020. A lot of people got shoved onto the online space, but they didn't know where to go. What am I looking for? What am I looking at? Who do I connect with? How do you know? And so some people got into addictions in those seasons. They got into, spaces that they didn't even know existed. Like, how did I get here? Right? All manner of things. But again, for me, it was a different thing. It was more like I got into my own original space. So I started to attend a lot of coaching programs during that time. That was the first time I really understood, what coaching was, what mentorship was, what was it all about. Before then, I wasn't really like, I used to say, no, I don't believe in, like, I knew the concept of mentorship and role modeling, but I'm like, no. nobody is perfect. Why would I make anyone my role model? Like, what if I like this person. What if I'm unable to separate the good and the bad from them? So I pick up everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back then I would say that Jesus is my role model because at least I know that he was the only perfect human. But then I began to understand better during the COVID, and I fell in love with coaching. And in this period, I started to do a lot of personality tests, to kind of find my way, to find myself, to find who was I, what made me think, what was the source of my interest and everything. That was when I also read deeper around the temperament, understood what being a sanguine felt like and things like that. But in those searches, I found out that coaching was one of my top strengths, and the fact that I've always wanted to help people. Like it's a natural thing. Like I could, although there was the bad side of it that I also got aware of, which is the people pleasing side.
Oh yeah.
So it was a thin line between really wanting to help people, really wanting to be impactful, and also wanting that validation, wanting to please everyone, wanting everyone to say yes to me and to say yes to everyone. Do you get? But I was able to discover, like, okay, I'm a hyperachiever, but at the same time I'm a people pleaser. So I needed to find a way to make them both my sage instead of my saboteur. So I got into that space. I started to see all those things. And so, when I started to go to attend events online, I would see people like boring. I'm like, no, you can't be boring. Yes, I know it's an online event, but come on, guys, wake up. And so when I would be in people's Zoom sessions or conferences, if I had opportunities, at some point I started to say, I can host. And when I hosted, the responses was always like, oh my God, who is she? Like, she was able to hold the crowd even in a virtual space. So I started to name myself, like, I'm your virtual host. Like, if you want your events to be very, very lively from A to Z, I'm your girl. And so I started to go into that more. But because I was also somebody who loved to explore gadgets, I started to look into, okay, what platforms make it more interesting? So I started my own personal conference to try out those things. And when I did my conference, everybody was like, oh, how did you do it? I'm like, do what? How did you make it so seamless? I'm like, I just did it. And so people started to come to me like, I want that. I want you to do that for me. I want to put a conference together, a 2-day conference, a 3-day conference. I'm like, okay, this is something. I started to charge for it. Yeah. So as I said, this is what I do. Like, this is my new JD. And so that's what, started the whole event thing.
Okay.
And then I realized that even though this is virtual, there is also an adaptation of it to the real world. Like, and the moment I named this thing that has always been here, that others have called something else, called, oh, you're being too much. Oh, you're too, can you calm down? You're too, I don't know what to call you, give it all sorts of names. And so I would most times pretend I would gauge the circle. If everybody's like uptight, I uptight with them. If they're like open, I'm like, okay, these are my peeps, right? But it's made me what? A chameleon, because this person experienced me differently from what this person experienced me differently. But when I began to see it, I'm like, I can't sustain that. I have to be me. And if I'm me and I'm this person and you can't stand me, then we're not supposed to be in the same place. We're not supposed to be in the same circle. And I'm fine. I am okay with that.
Sure.
So that was when I made it, energetic EJ. And every time that name is mentioned, it's more like an affirmation. I bring the energy, I bring the positive vibe into any space, whether it's virtual or physical. And so that kind of also then extended into physical events when I host events. So I started to do the MC thing as well.
And I know the audience can feel that energetic aspect of yourself. And I resonate with it because, again, I'm like as a child, I was hyperactive, and that's, you know, I'm in my mid 50s now, and it hasn't really ebbed off. My body's a little worse for the wear because I did things, you know, I shouldn't have done, you know, overexertion and things like that. But I can relate to that, and I can relate. And I love that you speak to the authenticity within, to say that you don't want to be that person for those people. You want to be you for people who can connect with you and resonate with you. And I think that's good. And it may cost you in the short term, but I think that authenticity comes through even more when you find your groove and when people are attracted to you. So that's amazing. And that's really a good pointer to take away from this conversation, is that sometimes, you know, I look at it as a spectrum. Like if I get in a room full of people and I kind of sense, or I get with a single person and I sense kind of who they are, like if I just intuit, then I will adapt myself a little bit so that I don't come off as being abrasive or obnoxious. And, you know, that took years of me offending people or upsetting people but I think, like you said, when you're hired out as a professional and you're doing something, I think that's where you really do have to be more honest and say, look, I can't get in front of these people. This is not. So anyway, I acknowledge that. And I think that's awesome. We're just over an hour, I think. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to have all your contact information down below, and I'm going to make sure people can find you. But I would like, for the last few minutes, if you want to share future visions, or even just talk about what you can provide for people right now, or a combination of the two. Like, what does energetic EJ want to do for the rest of her life as far as making changes? And you know, this could open us up for another hour, but you know, just if you want to knock it out of the park for our last segment here, and just share with the audience again a little bit of what you can offer people as a coach, or as any of the other hats that you wear. And then what do you think your future looks like?
What my future looks like, I don't know. I don't know.
Perfect answer. Yeah.
But one thing I know is that I am impact driven. So whatever that looks like is going to evolve, as I've already seen. It keeps evolving, and I'm okay with evolving because I'm not a tree. Okay, I grow in and out of season. A tree sometimes will shed all its leaf, and it's just like, oh, this tree is dead. But then come back the next season, it is full and luscious and beautiful and can be a shade again, right? So I am a firm believer that that's who we are as humans. We go through those seasons, and I'm okay with embracing every season as it comes. So I look at life in assignments. Per time, there is an assignment, and that assignment shifts, but the core is always there. And my core is that I'm a person of impact, and I am an inspirator by design. So it doesn't really matter what I do. If I am singing today, I'm inspiring somebody. If I'm acting today, I'm inspiring somebody. All right. So I'm an inspirator by design, and I consider that a blessing. And so that's why I'm very cautious about what I do, because I know that there is somebody somewhere. And I'm a one-person person, by the way. One person. If one person is the one that this episode is for, I have done my assignment and I've spoken to that one person, and I'm okay with it. Yep. So I'm that one-person. I am impact-driven, and that is one constant thing you will find per season with me. But in this season, as a coach, I am speaking to women, especially career and entrepreneur women in their 40s. Maybe you're looking at the 40 in the horizon and you're already thinking, you know, it's not a lie when they say life begins at 40, because it's at that moment you begin to look deep down into your life. You begin to have this very candid conversations with yourself, asking yourself, like, am I really fulfilling purpose? Like, am I really doing what God has placed me here, or whatever you believe, right? But I'm a believer of God, right? And I believe He put us here for a reason. Like, am I really impacting my world the way I should be? These are the kind of questions that come in. And for most of us, if we sit with ourselves, I keep saying this, there's so much power in personal reflection. If you sit with yourself, you can go back and see exactly what your original dream was. We all had it when we were kids, when we were babies. But circumstances, parents, events of life started to question those things in us, and we started to waver. There's just a few percentage of humanity that had the blessing of either having people around them when they were babies or when they were growing up to capture the picture of what they saw and help them nurture it. And those are the 1% that are flying high in their natural habitat, in the things that they were created for. But the rest of us, maybe not. We dabble and dabble and dabble, but that thing never leaves us. That dream never leaves you. I don't know about you, but I would, pop up in the middle of the night, just like, boom, a flash, but the kind of flash that wakes you up and like, no, I'm supposed to be doing this thing. This is why I'm here. So it's about you paying attention, asking yourself those questions, or being in a community of people that would help you ask those questions, those deep, insightful questions that would help you always come back to center. Okay. And so I want to speak to women that your dreams are valid. You see, that dream that you've put in the back burner, that you have chosen to sacrifice on the altar of doing it for your children, doing it for your spouse, doing it for your mom, for your dad, but living in pain, in misery, because this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And you've built a good profession for yourself. You're succeeding, and that's okay. But there is this hollowness that you feel like, I know I have the money, I know I have the prestige, I have the BSc, the MSc, the BCG, all the titles, but there's just this dissatisfaction. Please, your dreams are calling. They're calling your name. Pick them up and let's live. Even if you've lived 40, even if you've lived 45, and you have just 5 or 10 or 15, those 5, 10, or 15 years can be the best of your life if you tap back into your dreams. And that is what I want to help women do, to tap back into that little girl in them that journals, that said, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. Yes, you might not be able to be an astronaut again at this stage, but there is something else that calls at your heart, and you know it. If you are truthful with yourself, you know it. But there's just that fear of like, oh my God, I've spent 20 years in this career. Am I now going to leave all of this to pursue this? And the truth is, why not? There could be a plan, there could be a roadmap, but by all means, your fulfillment, your joy, the happiness of living in purpose, it's more rewarding than any other success that you might have right now. And that's what I want to help women do. But then as a voice person, I speak this to the young people. You're afraid of using your voice. You're afraid of, oh my God, who's going to listen to me? Dude, there are people who are going to listen to you. You just need to open your mouth and speak. And we can walk through training your voice, adding up all those extra skills that will make you stand out. So I have communities for the voicing thing, and then my coaching is Get Towards Women. Those are 2 things that every of my expressions are, funneling down into.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And it's all positive change making. And
Absolutely.
Again, hats off to you for that. And when you were speaking to your desire to work with women over 40, I thought Energetic EJ is a midwife of women's dreams, and she's helping them birth those dreams, because like you said,
I gotta write that down.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please.
I should use that in our content. I am your dream midwife. Woo.
Yeah, there you go. It's a powerful metaphor, but it's so true, because they're pregnant with potential, and there are suppressive things that get in the way of their expressing that. And there you are, there you are. So.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I love it.
Well, here's to your success in birthing in so many beautiful dreams and so many beautiful ideas. I'm looking forward to checking back in with you and finding out what's going on. And on that note, you're always welcome to come back. I would like to have another conversation with you at some point and just continue this beautiful flow that we're creating. I do want to thank you. in a larger sense too, for just being my guest and having this conversation. Two people, different parts of the world, different cultures. We get together. We're very similar, but we're also unique. And I love that, you know, intersectionality and our just getting together and being creative with each other. So I want to honor both of us and thank you specifically for being a part of that creative conversation that we've just had. So
thank you,
yeah,
thank you for making me a part of your journey and of your creation.
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I love networking and I love associating with people who are switched on, creative, and a guiding light for other people, or a midwife, or however we want to frame that. So thank you. And like I said, let's stay in touch with each other. For the YouTube audience, again, all contact information for Energetic EJ will be down below. And I encourage you to, she has a YouTube channel, so you can continue to watch her growth and success and get updates and so forth. So anyway, it's been a beautiful conversation. I will say goodbye to you after I stop the record. To the YouTube audience, thank you so much. Again, if there's that one person out there, and it's funny you said that, because that's what I ask of these conversations with any of my guests, is even if it changes one life or trajectory of one soul, then yeah, we've done our work. So thank you. Again, Energetic EJ, it's been an honor having you as a guest. And like I said, we'll say goodbye after I stop recording. All right, you two guys, take care. Thank you.